I'll close where I started. I truly believe in the power of government to improve people's lives. I know that all of you share that commitment as well. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here on a Saturday morning, and you wouldn't be doing all of the work that you do at other times. I know we have legislators, former legislators, county officials, people who have been active in our Democratic committees over many years, local officials, and I appreciate all of the work that you do and that we can do together. I encourage you to consider the 3 points that I made earlier about what makes me unique in this race, which is my directly relevant experience that I am going to bring to the state level, my 20 years of Democratic activism and my preparation to be a leader for Democrats at the state level, and that this race is our chance to guarantee that we will have at least one Democratic woman at the Executive Council table, no matter what happens in November. I need your help to win this race on September 10th. I have yard signs here, and I would love for you to take one with you. In low turnout elections like state primaries, things like yard signs matter a lot. And of course, as we enter the final weeks of the campaign, money becomes the megaphone. You have probably been receiving mailers already. Our mailboxes are starting to get full. We have a lot of primaries happening. But it's impossible for me to knock on every single door, and it's impossible for me to talk to every single voter. And so mailers do become important. And so I also would invite you, if you have been, if my message has resonated with you, I would ask you to visit my website, KarenLeoHill.com, and consider making a contribution to help me as we enter these final weeks of the campaign. I really appreciate the opportunity to answer your questions today. I hope that my depth of experience and my passion for the public service has come through, and I sincerely request your vote on September 10th and your support between now and then. Thank you so much.
Put forward ludicrous proposals about busing us down to Massachusetts. Was one of them. Going to double sessions from 6 a.m. to noon, and noon to 6 p.m. was another. And it ripped our town apart to the point that 40% of the kids in my high school class ended up leaving, to go to public schools. Friendships that were torn apart. Okay. Now, this has been a battle at the state level for decades. Right? Everyone knows the Claremont decision. Right? We've been fighting that battle for years now. And there are actually 2 cases. Actually, after that Claremont decision, we made a little progress. And that was with the statewide education property tax, which was implemented, and tried to equalize the disparities that we saw between communities. What happened was a group of towns, so-called donor towns, formed coalition communities, and they lobbied the state government to neuter that statewide education property tax. Right? That was in 2006. Now that battle is being fought in the courts. And why I say this is the point of differentiation is I believe that no one's education, no child's education should depend on their zip code. And I very, very passionately believe that. There is a new incarnation of coalition communities, Coalition 2.0, and they have continued to lobby and fight this battle in court. Now, Lebanon is part of that coalition communities, and my opponent voted to join that coalition. I don't consider that relevant to this race, because what we want is someone who believes in fairness and is going to passionately advocate for that. So I do think that is a differentiating factor, and I wanted to make sure that we have an opportunity to talk about public education to do that. So, putting that aside, again, I will highlight this is a safe blue Democratic district. This is an opportunity to have someone who will speak to progressive values, right? You don't know the swath of issues that the executive council is going to have to deal with because they deal with everything. And so what you want is someone that you feel you share the values with and is going to fight for you and for every grandstander.
The opportunity to respond to an attack. I'm happy to talk about public education funding. It's actually something that I know quite a lot about. When I wrote my undergraduate honors thesis at Dartmouth, it was on public education funding in New Hampshire and Vermont in the late 90s, just after the Claremont decisions had come down. And I've had a front row seat for the last 20 years as a city councilor to how the state's failure to fund public education has harmed our communities. So it's something I know a lot about. Now, when you're new to something, there are things that you don't know. And I remember when I was new to government, there are things that I also did not know about, and I learned a lot. And I think there are things that my opponent does not yet know. One, I don't think he knows that the town of New London, where he's from, is a very active member of the coalition communities. And I think it would be good for him to talk to the select board about why they thought it was a good idea to join the coalition communities. Secondly, he doesn't seem to know what the coalition communities stand for. So first of all, and I think that the principles are things that actually we all agree on. One, that property taxes are regressive and that they're not fair. Two, that there are poor people in wealthy towns and they deserve to be treated fairly. And three, that the state has failed to fund its constitutional obligation to provide public education and adequate public education in New Hampshire, and that property taxes should not be the primary source of funding for public education in New Hampshire. And thirdly, I think that my opponent does not know that in fact this is a legislative issue. It's interesting for us to share our opinions on public education funding, but it's a legislative issue. It's not something that the Executive Council votes